Hi, I'm Cathy Brown. Back in 2022, the first set of Ultra T high performance feet came out for brother and baby lock machines. You know, I've been using these every time I've sewn since then. I love these feet. Well, these are high performance versions of the metal silver feet that came with your machine. So you have a J foot, an N foot, and a 1/4 inch foot. But I have some news. Guess what? A second set of Ultra T high performance feet have come out for baby lock and brother machines. They are feet that probably didn't come with your machine. I am excited to show you the second set of Ultra T high performance red feet. I think you're going to want to check this out. I'm Cathy Brown. This is Sewing Tech Talk. Let's get high performance. So back in 2022, I did do a promotion for these feet. And let's take a look at that video so I can talk to you a little bit about that first set. So let's review that first set, and then we'll come back and then we'll dive deep into the next 3 high performance feet. So the best compliment I can give these feet is in the morning when I get up and I take the cover off my machine, I always have a red foot on there. Because I sew a lot of things. I'm a quilter, I like to sew garments, I sew home decor and all kinds of unique fabrics. So I really like these feet because they're truly high performance feet. So if I go from a quilt to a garment in the same day, well then I don't have to worry so much about it. I really like sewing when I quilt. I like putting long strips together and they come out absolutely even. When you're sewing a long strip, it may not necessarily be true at the end that everything comes out even. I love to use decorative stitches when I'm doing my quilting. And the quilt needs to move laterally when the machine's doing those big decorative stitches. So I love using the in foot and the high performance feet, and the quilt just flows and gives me the exact big stitch that I want. I love sewing on these unique fabrics, and I just have my regular foot on there. So yes, high performance feet make your sewing that much better. So now these feet, this new set of feet probably are not the ones that came with your machine. Versions of them may have come with your machine. And let's talk about them individually, but let's see them as a group right now. So the 3 new feet are, you have a bi-level foot. That's great for sewing next to something that's high and low at the same time, like a quilt binding. This is the narrow zipper foot. I love this. This is definitely for sewing next to something that's very tall. And the open toe foot. Now the zipper foot is a narrow zipper foot. The one that came with your machine is probably very much like this. It has the 2 connection points, and you put it on either side of the connection depending on where you want to sew. I have a feeling why they've included this one, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the zipper foot. Now the open toe foot may or may not have come with your machine. Remember, this set fits most brother and baby lock machines, not always just the high end. So if you have, like, say, an entry-level machine, these feet are probably going to fit, and they probably didn't come with your machine. So let's start out with this open toe foot. So this open toe foot has a large opening, and I have a handout for this in all my videos, and it shows these feet very up close, and it talks to you about the features of the foot. But just briefly, this foot, we'll bring it up here and let's sew with it. We'll put it on the machine. This foot has center, left needle, right needle markings, and the mark for the position of the needle. The one that may or may not have come with your machine is this clear plastic one. And it's a great foot, don't get me wrong. It does have a marking for center needle position. But the difference is, even though this is plastic and semi-slick, this foot is very lightweight. I'm going to use the sewing term squirrely. It kind of doesn't hold the fabric very, very close. And in control. So both of these feet have openings in the bottom. However, the one on the Ultra T foot is a little bit larger than the one on this plastic open toe foot. So let's get started sewing with this. So now I'm on the Stellaire today. Like I said, these feet fit in most Baby Lock and Brother machines. If you watch that previous video, the one I did on the first set one, I was on a Baby Lock machine that was on the Altair, which is the Baby Lock version of this Stellaire. So now, on this Stellaire 2, there's a really cool feature that's called tapering. So when you're coming up to the corner or something and you're turning the corner when you're doing applique, or you're just doing any kind of a decorative stitch that you want to come to a point, it has an automatic tapering feature. And on the machine it looks like this. So when I select this stitch, and I'm going to use this stitch for my little leaves right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the width of it, because that's a pretty wide stitch. So let's make that a little bit narrower. Now when I touch this icon here, I can program this tapering stitch. I have all kinds of different starting and endings, and I have 2 ways to do it. This open toe foot really comes in handy for one. If I choose the T right here, I can program a certain number of repeats for this stitch. Well, when I'm stitching my leaves, they're all different sizes, so that really doesn't work for this project I have today. This icon with the little reverse symbol, well, I can tell the machine when I want it to start the taper. Now, with the open toe foot, I can literally see when that needs to be. With an in foot, like it suggests on the machine, well, I have an Ultra T version of that, but I really can't see where it's coming up. It kind of blocks my view. So I really like the open toe foot for this. So let's choose our beginning. I think I've chosen, let's see, I think I started with 30. Do you see how it changes that? And on the end, I think I also went with a 30, and then that's how my stitch is going to look. Now, one thing to know is when I'm finishing up my stitch, I can literally measure how far that distance is. So when I'm coming around my leaf, I know when to start the taper. I start the taper by pressing the reverse button on the machine, and that tells the machine, start this taper. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to come here, I'm going to lower my presser foot, and I can see, using the icons on the foot, the little indents or marks, I can see where that needs to start. And I think it's going to come right up in here, get big, and then go small. Let's see if I can stitch that. So I can clearly see on the foot, I have about this distance to have that taper come to a point. I'm going to go a couple more stitches. I think that should be okay. Let's hope I guessed right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press the reverse lever on the machine, and that tells the machine we're in the ending portion of this taper. Wow, that came out pretty good. Do you see how that stitch got much smaller? Now I have different tapers that I can select. Some of them are longer than others. So I would do a practice to figure out where I needed to stop. But can you see how this open toe foot really helps me know where to start my taper, and it really helps me to hit on either side to make sure I'm doing my applique correctly. So in the handout, I make lots of suggestions about what to use this open toe foot for. It's to say that it's where you have to absolutely see where you're going. You're doing a decorative stitch, you're doing any kind of placement, you really need to see exactly where that needle is going to come down. So it's a great foot for precision sewing, and, well, you just can't go wrong if you can see where you're going. And the marks on the foot, well, they really help you place it so that you know where that's going to be. So let's talk about the narrow zipper foot. Let me grab my things for the narrow zipper foot, because I think a narrow zipper foot's really going to help you do some things that you may have been kind of lollygagging with. So let me change over and we'll talk about that narrow zipper foot. So your machine probably came with the zipper foot. It's the I foot. I don't know why it's called the I foot. I think there might be a better foot. Maybe that's what the I comes from. Anyway, I think I know why this foot was included probably with your machine for use in sewing next to something tall. With this I foot, it attaches in two different places, which means if your needle is the center needle position, if you attach it to the left or the right, the needle comes down either on this side or that side. Let's just say I think it's a little bit safer if you're not used to adjusting your needle. Now the narrow zipper foot attaches in one place, and that means you have to remember to put your needle all the way to the left or all the way to the right. So let's do that. Oh, before we get there, why do I think this is a better foot? That's very important. Well, the answer comes down below. If you look underneath on this foot, this is that I foot. Do you see how it has this wide space on the side, and the narrow zipper foot does not? Well, let's write it next to this decorative trim. Can you see how when I'm writing it next to this decorative trim, even if the needle's here, I'm not very close to the trim at all. It's difficult to get close. Now let's use that narrow zipper foot. Look at here, my friends, I can get very close. So if you've kind of avoided doing cording or piping, well, this foot's going to make that much easier. Now, here's what I think about cording or piping. It really adds to your sewing project. When you put piping in a garment or a corded pillow, it just takes it to that next level. So I think this foot might be your new best friend because you can add that piping or cording easily. Oh, even if you're piping or cording, no, this is not what they tie up ships with. This is actual decorator cording. You can see how, well, you need quite a narrow foot to get next to this. So let's put this on and let me show you some piping in a project that I'm doing. So it snaps on in the middle. And you can see how if I just sew with my center needle position, I'm going to hit right in the middle of the foot. And that's not really what I want to do. So I am going to go to my extreme left needle position, which is 0.0 millimeters. Now I can also go to the other side of the foot, and that would be 7.0 millimeters. Technically, I also have 1 millimeter of wiggle room on either side of the foot. So I could go to 1 millimeter or all the way over to 6, if you have to have that certain sweet spot for doing your sewing. Now here's my project. I'm doing this bag. I've been thinking about doing this bag for quite a while, and I think the piping really adds to the, it makes it look that much nicer, especially on the edge of the pockets. Now, when I make my piping, I can either just make the piping before I go ahead and sew it on, or I can go ahead and kind of sew the piping down and then kind of put it into place. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I can either create my piping ahead of time. So here's some piping right here that I could prepare ahead of time. This is much thicker, and you can see that I can come on pretty much next to it and sew and prepare my piping before I go ahead and put it on the garment or my pillow. See how it sews right along that edge. So now my piping is prepared, and I can go ahead and sew it onto my project. This is straight of grain. You can always also make it a bias piping if you're going around curves. And I would make this, the width of my piping, closer to what my seam allowance should be. Now here's another piece I'd like to show you. This is double-faced bridal satin. This is the slickest stuff on earth. In fact, it's so slick, my piping is coming out. So why do you think that this foot would be perfect for double-faced satin that's the slickest stuff on earth? Well, actually, I don't want any friction to kind of move this satin around. So if I'm pre-preparing my satin, whoop, it's so slick. If I'm pre-preparing this, a high-performance anti-friction foot is really going to give me excellent results. Of course, I'd use a matching thread, but you could see how that really would add something really beautiful to the edge of your garment. And this foot handles this super slick fabric. Excellent. Okay, so here's my last little piece of, well, not my last, but close to my last little piece of piping. Now remember, you don't have to put the piping on, you don't have to make it before you put it on. So I'm going to just use this zipper foot, and I'm just going to kind of tack it down. On the machine, I'm just going to go to a long stitch length. I'm just tacking down the side of this where I want it to be. Notice how it's open, and it's going to fold over the top of my piping. I'm just basting it down. All right, so I basted it down. Now let's take my piece of piping, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it in where I need to go, fold it on over, kind of squish it off. I'm kind of making a taco here, right? So this is the filling down in here. I'm going to come down. I might still baste it in because I'm going to put another piece to it eventually. See how easy and slick that is? I'm just coming around and stitching that down. Now when I put my second piece, my lining fabric on the top, I'm just going to feel this kind of bulge where the piping is and stitch right next to it. And it really adds to that, well, it adds to that finished edge. Now, while we're here, I want to show you something else that I think piping is really, really good for. Here's the edge where I'm putting it down, and I'm stitching this part down to the other. And I could use my zipper foot for that, but let's go back to that one foot. Let's go back to the open toe foot. Check it out. What happens is when you're stitching down, when you're stitching something down and you're stitching it through the piping, if you stitch right here in this little ditch, oh my goodness, what happens is you really don't see your top stitching. That's another advantage. So let's go back to that center needle position and let's just stitch right in that ditch. Remember, I really need to see where I'm going. So that has now been stitched down, and I double dog dare you to see it. It really adds that professional touch. So now I've used two of the feet. I've used that narrow zipper foot, and that open toe foot gets me exactly where I want to be. Now, there's another foot that I think if you're a quilter, you're going to be amazed with. It's the bi-level foot. And what this foot does, well, if you've ever kind of struggled with quilt bindings, or you want to make that quick quilt and you don't want to sit forever and hand stitch it down, well, let's set up for that. And I really want to show you this quick, fast, and easy way to bind a quilt. So if you're a quilter like me, I hope you're excited about the bi-level foot, because this foot really makes bindings super easy. Like I said, yes, I love to hand sew bindings on those special quilts, but maybe there are some quilts you just want to make done fast. Or if it's a baby quilt that's going to be used to death, you really want to sew that binding down securely. Now let's take a look at this foot. It looks very much like the J foot when you take a first look. They both have the leveling button that, if you press it, holds the foot down level when it's going over thick fabrics. But there is a big difference. Well, this one is a little bit shorter. It has some different markings, but the secret is underneath. When you look underneath, there's a thick side and a thin side to this foot. which means if you fold the binding up, it is thicker on the one side, obviously, than the other. So if you've ever tried to sew your bindings down and you can't keep it straight, right? You just can't keep it straight. Well, why? Well, because a standard foot is going to be like this, and the foot always wants to fall off from the thick side to the thin side. This thicker side, it holds the foot level, so the foot doesn't want to slide around. And this is a high-performance foot, which means it's an anti-friction foot, which means it's not going to scoot your binding one way or the other. I think you can tell I really like this foot. And you can use it for some other things as well. Here's something that I put together that I'd like to show you. This is a mock-up for a quilt strap or a purse strap. I have a piece of vinyl down the middle, and vinyl naturally is thicker than fabric. When using this foot for applique with the vinyl, it literally doesn't stick to the vinyl, but it slides along perfectly. So you can see I've made multiple passes with different sides of the vinyl, different placements of the needle. I also had a fun idea. If you have any kind of vinyl scraps, they'd make a cute, fun applique. Check this out. So I just took some vinyl, cut some triangles, that's what they're called, and I sewed down one side, and I'm just going to sew back on the other side. This would make a cute addition to a purse. Vinyl applique? Well, I have some high-end wallets that I was given. They use vinyl and they applique a design on the outside of the handbag. This foot would be ideal if you want to create your own high-end designer purse. So now, let's just do a quilt binding real quick. So I have this quilt that I'm doing. I did a hexagon quilt, and what I'm going to do is I'm sewing the binding on with the foot. Now, what I'm doing is I sewed the binding to the back, and I'm bringing it around to the front. And this foot's going to ride right along the edge of that binding. So let's put it on and see what it looks like. So I'm going to put the foot on the machine, and I want you to notice something right away. Can you see how the foot's kind of going up on one side than the other? This is the thick side, and on the foot there's a marking for where that ends. There's also a center marking and a placement for the needle, and most importantly, there's a place to know where a 1/4 inch is. So let's me bring up my little quilt, and we're going to stitch down that binding. So when I turn my binding over to the front and I lower the presser foot, what I want to do is I want this mark to ride right along that folded edge. Remember, I'm on the front side, but I could just as easily be on the back side. This is a 2.5 inch wide strip that's been doubled and sewn with a raw edge next to the raw edge of the quilt. By using a 2.5 inch strip, what happens, and I'll show you where I've stitched before, this needle placement puts that top stitching right on the inside of that binding. And if you use a thread that matches your bottom quilting thread, well, it kind of just looks like quilting. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to go needle down just to check my position, and I think that looks pretty good. So I'm in the center needle position. Let's see what I can do. It rides super smooth. Now when I come to the corner, what I am going to do is I'm going to fold it into position. And stitch up to that edge, that folded edge. Now, this is not a 90-degree corner, obviously. If it was, I could use this mark here to know exactly where I needed to stop when I'm sewing on the binding. So when I turn, if I lower the presser foot, I can clearly see I'm not going to be where I need to be because this folded edge is not where that mark should be. So let's go one more stitch. I'm going to go needle up, needle down, and notice how the fabric, this thick fabric, flows beautifully under that high-performance foot. Now, when I turn it, I can tell I'm exactly where I need to be, and that thick part just flows right underneath the foot. I have been binding quilts like crazy with this foot because it makes it fast and easy. Yes, I'll still do my fancy ones by hand, but this foot really rocks out and solves that problem of, you know, if you've bound a quilt with a machine foot, you know you've had trouble before. So this is the new set of Baby Lock Brother Ultra T feet. Set number 2. If you don't have set number 1, well, they've been so popular, they've been selling like crazy. But I think this second set, well, I think no matter what Brother or Baby Lock machine you have, within reason, probably going to work with these feet. If you have questions, you can always call customer service and they'll get you all set up. I'm Cathy. This has been Sewing Tech Talk. I'm real excited about these new feet. I bet you can tell. I'm going to shoot it over to George. Thanks for sticking with me today.
We have a brand new set of Ultra T high performance sewing feet for the Brother and Baby Lock sewing machines. It includes a quilt binding foot, a zipper foot, as well as a high performance open toe foot. This combines with our original sets for the Brother and Baby Lock sewing machines and the Janome 9mm machines, as well as we have the foot for the 8 thread and cover stitch Baby Lock sergers. The response has been overwhelming. I developed the Ultra T high performance sewing feet 3 years ago, and I've received so many amazing comments and reviews. People love the red feet, as they call it. And because of all this response, I've listened to some of the asks. People have been asking for other feet. And so I've developed my set number 2, as I call it, for the Brother and Baby Lock machines. And so what makes the Ultra T feet so much better? Well, they are made of a more durable synthetic resin than your typical non-stick feet. So the problem with your standard feet is that the standard foot develops friction on the top layer of fabric. And what that does, that causes it to slip in relation to the bottom, and thus you get puckering. Now, many people have discovered that using a non-stick foot does help, but the problem is when you sew off the fabric and you keep doing that, the feed dogs cause marking and scars, so you can't use it for regular sewing. Well, the Ultra T feet are made entirely of a much more durable synthetic resin, so they can take the wear and tear, of course, for sewing on all your different synthetic fabrics, but also you can use it for all-purpose sewing like denims and sheer fabrics. So the set number 2, it consists of first a quilt binding foot, and this quilt binding foot has a groove or edge on the left side, and that makes it so it holds the fabric securely, but yet it has that non-stick flow of the fabric. So let's say on a seam like with this vinyl, that it's amazing how well this controls for top stitching, but for quilt binding. See, quilt binding, this is your final stage in quilting. You want everything just right, and having this non-stick and that edge is really going to grab it so you can make that perfect quilt binding regardless of the type of fabric, or going across the grains, or with decorative quilts. This is amazing. The next foot is the zipper foot. Now, this zipper foot, made of that Ultra T high performance material, is exactly a 1/4 inch, which so that gives you other benefits, but it's very, very narrow. So you can get right up against those bulky zippers and sew beautifully, regardless of the fabric or the position. Also with other materials like this minky, or sometimes you just want to be able to get up close to a seam, or for piping and all different things. This gives you such amazing control. And the final foot of this set is a high performance open toe foot for the Brother and Baby Lock machines. I didn't have that before in the other sets, and this is designed to give you that nice view of the fabric when you're doing applique, like with this satin ribbon, doing the blanket stitch, and so that satin flows through beautifully, and you're able to give you that proper pressure, and then coming back with a decorative stitch on it. Oh, it's so beautiful. But what about situations like this with this lace and doing a pin stitch on netting? See, I want this to flow, but I want it secure, and it handles it amazing. So you asked for it, we got it. We just got a shipment of these in, and we have a special introductory price. This is for the number 2 set for the Brother and Baby Lock machines, and it has a regular retail price at $99.99, and our introductory price is $69.99. And so click on the link to order. If you have any questions on this, you can email us at customerservice@moores-so.com or call us at 1-800-865-9664. Now, we also have our other sets, the original set for the Brother and Baby Lock sewing machines, as well as the Janome 9mm machines. We have those in stock, and these are amazing. So these consist of your all-purpose sewing foot, so you can sew on all different types of fabric without having the friction to give you better fabric control. It also has a 1/4-inch foot. These are the only non-stick 1/4-inch feet in the industry, and that gives you so much better flow for doing your piecing from one piece to the next. Without the non-stick, sometimes when you sew off the fabric, the two layers, they shift and gives you the uneven surface, but the 1/4-inch Ultra T foot gives you that beautiful flow of the fabric. And then it gives you the decorative foot, that for the Brother and Baby Lock, which gives you the ability to sew sideways in your directional stitches, as well as for the Janome, it has the open toe. Now, we also have the foot for the 8-thread sergers, the Baby Lock 8-thread sergers, as well as the Baby Lock cover stitch machine. And I will tell you, this is still our #1 selling foot because people love how it improves the performance on your sergers. The world's finest sergers are the Baby Lock, and this makes it even more better. So click on the link, you'll go to the landing page that has all the different choices, and get your red feet, get the Ultra T, and improve your sewing performance dramatically. Bye for now.
Hi, I'm Cathy Brown. Back in 2022, well, the first set of Ultra Performance feet, that's not what I wanted to say. Cut.